So welcome to the Global Discussion. This is discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Ayse Birsel. And it's delightful to have you with us today. You're very welcome to the podcast. And I want to begin, as I do on these podcasts, by asking you to introduce yourself to our international audience. Tell us a little bit about your journey, what you're involved in, what you do, and also what you're passionate about. So over to you, Ayse.
Great. Hi, Simon. It's so good to be together. It's a rainy day in New York, and I feel like a little bit like it's like Dublin, you know.
Yeah, it can get a little bit like that in Dublin City, yeah. But New York and Dublin may be a little bit similar today.
Maybe a little bit similar. And hello to everyone who's listening to us today. I grew up in Turkey in a family of lawyers. But I was creative, and I quickly figured out that lawyers were pessimists by training. You know, they imagine the worst possible scenario, and I wanted to be an optimist. And I wanted to imagine the best possible scenario and solve problems by generating ideas. So I turned towards industrial design. I came to do my master's at Pratt Institute in New York, and then I stayed here, you know, and I've stayed so long that I've become a New Yorker. So, and our studio is based here. I co-founded Birsel Seck with my husband, Bibi Seck, and Bibi is really now very passionate about bringing design to West Africa. That's why I have a painting of Dakar behind me. So he's developing design there, and I'm holding the fort here in New York, in doing all kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about Birsel Seck, just for people that may not be familiar with the brand, the organization, because it's around a long time now. It's very well renowned, and you've worked with some of the world's leading brands. So maybe could you just tell us a little bit about the company?
Yeah, so the company started when I met Bibi, and the way we met is, I think, important to the foundation of the company. I was asked to design a concept car for Renault, the French automobile manufacturer. And I was coming at it from an industrial design perspective, knew little about car design, which is a huge specialty. And so I asked my client if they could send me a mentor that could tell me what I can and cannot do as I design this concept car. And they said, oh, we're going to send you Bibi Seck, and you're going to love him. And apparently they told Bibi the same thing, you're going to love her. So we founded our company on that foundation of love. We fell in love. I mean, we listened to our client, right? It's and then decided to live together and work together. And really, we're known for our designs and systems that are user-centered. And a lot of people really talk about this now, but we were one of the first innovation studios to really create a process for developing empathy for your end user and really honoring them. And we design everything from office systems to toilet seats to automobiles to kitchen products and tools, you name it. So, I mean,
fantastic.
Probably your listeners have held something that we've designed in their hand or sat in it or on it. So,
you know, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm going to maybe expand on that a little bit, because you've worked with some of the world's leading brands. And you mentioned Renault, but I know you've done work with Toyota. You mentioned washroom equipment, but I think that's Toto. Is that Toto, the brand?
Toto,
which is, you know, it's the most futuristic brand you could possibly work with in that sector.
I know. I was known as the queen of toilets because of that work.
Yeah, but anybody that's not familiar with that brand should check it out. It really is a high spec technical product. It's incredible. But everything, whether it's
Herman
IKEA
Miller,
or
right?
pardon?
Herman Miller, we've
Yeah,
been an external studio, design studio for Herman Miller for more than 20 years now.
yeah, and Herman Miller. Anybody that's in or got any sort of inkling in terms of design will have heard of Herman Miller. But everything from Converse to Nike to Colgate-Palmolive to Philips to Tiffany and Co. I mean, you guys really are at the top of your game when it comes to some of these global brands. So it's fantastic. And it's amazing how the business started. I mean, how long ago was that, Ayse?
That was about 20 years ago.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. And why, just going back to something you said at the start. So obviously you're New York based, the studio's in New York, as I know. But why the move into, you said Africa at the top. So what's happening there?
So Bibi is French Senegalese. And even though, most of his studies in, undergraduate and graduate work, he did them in Paris. He worked for Renault in Paris. When our kids were really little, we kind of commuted between New York and Senegal or Dakar for about 2 years. And it was really hard to have small kids in New York. And we thought, Dakar, we had family there and a garden and all those good things. And so that was kind of a moment where Bibi went back and really connected with the sense of purpose that there's so much opportunity for growth and for design in Africa. And he wanted to play a leading role there. And so he started dividing his work between New York and Dakar. And now he has started a new concept store called 1408 in Dakar. And so it also now has a studio and a location attached to it. And we've both invested in that idea of, not only working here, but globally in Africa. And of course, we do work in Turkey as well.
That's very exciting. That really does expand things even further. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you a little bit as well, because in terms of the long life, and you'll know what I'm talking about. So could you maybe share the long life? Because that's a book that people should know about.
Yeah. So, well, somewhere along the this continuum, this journey of industrial design, I developed my process, basically try to articulate what I do intuitively by putting it on paper and mapping it out. And once I had that design process, I called it Deconstruction, Reconstruction. And, I believe that our life is our biggest project. And so once I had the process, I thought, hold on one second, let me put these two things together and see if I could apply my process to my life. Kind of like an experiment, right? And I became my first student and it seemed to work. So I invited my friends and then they were really interested in designing their life. And the whole thing kind of grew word of mouth. And then, I ended up writing a book about it, Design the Life You Love. And the interesting thing, Simon, I think you would appreciate this is, that process, designing your life, and our work as a studio became like talking vessels. And we realized that if we can get people to design their life, we can actually get them to design any subset of their life, and that we can co-design things with them. And that became part of our methodology with our clients, where, we've designed laundry with GE, we've designed co-designed electric vehicles with Toyota, you name it. Workplaces with Herman Miller's users. So the long life piece of it came into being because Amazon was interested in having us do a research project around design the life you love with people who are 65 years and older. And so that was the first foray into long life. And then we got a grant from the SCAN Foundation for 1 year, where we traveled the United States and co-designed long life with people, for 1 year. And that is my new book that just came to be. So that's the official story. Okay. You want to know the unofficial story?
Of course.
Let's do the unofficial story. Okay. And I admitted this to myself only recently, but really the thing is, this is a couple of years ago when our kids were young, and I could see my parents aging, and I freaked out just watching my parents age. And simply because, like, I remember, like, my kids would fall down and they're like 4 and 5, they would just get up, nothing would happen. And then my mother fell down and broke her hip. And I suddenly realized, like, these small things can become big when you're older. And I, feared for them. I could also see myself in them, this is my future. And I wanted to do something about it. And apparently I'm not alone, because 87% of Americans fear aging and worry about aging. And so being a designer, I mean, you know how it is, being a creative, I was like, okay, that's a good problem. Let me work on that. And because for us, problems are opportunities. And I thought, something that worries almost 90% of the population is something I can sink my teeth into. And so that's the idea.
Yeah, I think the older I get, the more you think about things like that. And when you see your own parents aging and your relatives aging, from when you were a child, and I think you think about life differently at different stages. So you're quite right. And I'm not sure what the stats are outside of the US, but I'd say it's fairly common in most parts of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the good news is we now have 20 to 30 more years to live compared to our grandparents. And, even like 50 years ago. So that's the good news. But with it, it brings this question of, like, hey, we might have this gift of time. So what are we going to do about it? And so the research really was with older people, but the lessons that I learned and my team learned from them were timeless, and I was like, these are beautiful lessons coming from people who have lived the longest, who are really experts on life. And I want my kids to know about these things. I want my friends to know about this. I wish I knew this when I was like in my 20s and 30s. So the book is really intentionally for everyone who wants to have like a good life.
How did you find, obviously coming from the design side, how did you find the author, the putting together of the book? How did you find that process?
Oh, I love that you asked me. So I love it, but I had to find my voice in it, because with my first book, when I first tried to write, when you think author, you think, well, I need to write. And I wrote something that is so boring that to this day, I haven't reread it. I'm like, if I can't read it, I don't want to show it to anyone, right? And then I tried to co-write it with a friend of mine, and I could only hear his voice. I couldn't hear my voice. I was like, that doesn't work. And it was actually Leah Kaplan, who's one of my dearest friends and oldest collaborators. She said, Ayse, what are you doing? Like, you're a visual thinker. This has to be a visual book. And then I was like, oh, okay, got it. So then I started drawing, and then I would write about what I drew. And both books, I don't think I could have done them any other way, but I don't know, I could show it to you. It's very visual, it's like that.
Yeah.
And that's really the idea that lessons I want my kids to learn. You know, we're right brain, left brain, right? You want to have both the logic of the written word, but the inspiration and the magic of putting things into a kind of visual representation. And really, it's true that the drawing is worth, one drawing is worth 1,000 words. So it.
Yeah, the power of an image is certainly there, and I think because I mean you're probably perfectly suited to put a book like that together because of your design background, but also I suppose the year-long co-design research year that you had, speaking to people, probably really helped shape the thinking for that. And I think we're all thinking as we transition about crafting this life that we want, that we need. And as you say, it's not just about desires and wants and needs and things that you're attracted to. It's also because we're living longer and things have to change, don't they?
They do. And actually, I learned this from a friend of mine. John Maeda actually was talking about the 5 things people regret when they're dying at the end of life. And you might have heard about this, but one of them is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not what others expected of me. And that is really, I mean, that's like a wake-up moment. And I would say the books I write are antidotes for that. How to help you live the life you want to live as the user of your own life, and get excited about the things you love, the ideas that you can generate, and teach you how to do that using design process at a very accessible level. Like a kid of 10 could do it, and a person of 90 can do it. You can certainly do it. I mean, thousands of people have done it, but when you do it, what it teaches you is to teach like an optimist and quickly move you out of that problem state of like, I can't believe I have this problem, I don't know what to do, to this is an opportunity, and here are the different ways that I can come up with ideas, and this is the one that excites me, I'm going to go forward with it.
I love that. And it makes me think as well about there are often times in life where you learn something new and you think to yourself, I wish I'd have known that 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or why did nobody tell me that, you know? And I think, you know, being able to design that sort of long life, or at least have some roadmap thoughts, some diagrams, images, and written words to help you a little bit along that track. I think that's wonderful. But while we're on the subject of books, I'm very interested to learn about books that you read. So when you have a bit of downtime, or you're on a plane, or whatever, wherever you read these days, what are the books, the titles, the authors? What do you find yourself attracted to? And are there any that you could share with us?
Absolutely. So first, I have to mention that if I'm traveling somewhere, or if I'm on vacation, I love to read thrillers. So let's just, you know, I just want to be clear that I don't only read like books related to my work, but when I do, I'm very lucky because now being a design author, I met a lot of designers. I met a lot of authors, and so now I have their books. So, okay, let's start with The Earned Life.
Okay.
Marshall Goldsmith. He's one of my heroes. And then we can continue with The Success Factor, Ruth Gautian. And then we can go to How to Begin. And that is MBS for short, Michael Bangay Stanier. And then this one makes me laugh because it goes well with my book. So it's called The Long Game. And so we joke with Dory Clark.
Dory Clark, is it?
Exactly.
Yes.
So Dory Clark and I are like, the two books are like peanut butter and jelly. You need both of them. And I have one more to mention. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, To Be Honest, by Ron Carucci, which these are all books that changed my life, got me to think about, I teach design process, but then once you have an idea, you also want to think about, well, how can I bring that to life? And these are books that kind of teach you the ins and outs of how to create rituals, habits that are going to make you a better person.
Well, thanks for sharing those. We'll put some links to those because there's some wonderful books there. And I like the variety in those books. And I'll definitely link those up so people can find them. So thanks so much for sharing those. That's great. When you look over your journey so far, obviously from your sort of pivot in the early days into industrial design, and the studios that you have now, and the being an author as well. When you look back, are the people that you looked up to, were the people that you admired around you, or that inspired you?
Oh, so many. And so many of them actually have helped me get to where I've gotten. And, I could do a bio by just listing the people who helped me and were amazingly generous. But maybe because we talked about his book, Marshall Goldsmith is one of my heroes and mentors. For transparency's sake, I am actually his life coach. So, but he is the person who's influenced me so much, and he's known as the world's #1 leadership coach. What inspires me about him is his just generosity of his spirit, and how he'll go out of his way to include his friends, recognize his friends, connect you to other people, and do it very naturally and without asking for anything in return. And he also started this these ideas about giving what he knows to other people for free. So there's one 100 Coaches, which is his community of coaches and CEOs and authors. And it's really the idea that, he wants to teach us everything he knows for free. And the only thing he expects of us is to do the same when we're older and, kind of share our knowledge with everyone. And during COVID, he took that one step further, and actually it was one of our conversations, but he said he wanted to give away everything he knows to everyone. And I said, Marshall, that's knowledge philanthropy. So, and that idea is such a beautiful idea that, that also inspires me. That level of generosity. And then the other thing I really like about him, sorry, I was just going to say, he's also very human, and he knows that we're not perfect. So he just reminds me sometimes it is what it is. And he just says he has this movement, just let it go. Yeah. And it's very freeing in a way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that term, knowledge philanthropy. I think that's a wonderful term. And often we think about, giving back and supporting various causes, and we all do what we can in certain areas. But that sharing of knowledge is a very powerful thing too, isn't it? And being able to pass on that knowledge. Yeah, I love that.
Well, Simon, it's kind of what you're doing, right? Is
a little bit, I suppose, in a little tiny part of my world, maybe.
Yeah. So I think we're all trying.
Yeah, no, I do like that a lot. That will stick with me. And when I'm as I just said, things that stick with you and things, you've obviously had a lot of influence over the years. And is there any advice that you've really hung on to and clung on to that stays with you to this day? Or is there anything that you find yourself saying to other people when it comes to advice that you think, has served you well, that you want to pass on to other people?
I think there are, of course, many things, but when you ask me that question, I'll just share what comes, out first. And that is, I really believe that we can work with our friends and become friends with the people we work with, and that collaboration is the beginning of a lot of great ideas and projects. And that to me is the thing that, whenever I have a problem, I tend to ask for help, and it's one of my superpowers. And I realized that it doesn't come easy to so many other people, because they see it as like a weakness or a vulnerability. And I started reframing the idea of asking for help is really a collaboration. And a collaboration is a beautiful thing. So, and one that, really allows us to go beyond our own limits. So that's the one that came to my mind, is like, whenever I'm in trouble, right? That's
No, I love that. I love that in terms of an answer. I think that's perfect. Now we're at the start of a new year as we record this. We're just about to go into a new year, and I'd like to ask you a little bit about what does that look like for you when you look at a year ahead now? What are you passionate about? What are you going to be focused on? What are you hoping to achieve over the next sort of 12 months?
So, actually, this is something that the end of the year gave me as a gift. My book just came out beginning of December, and it became number 97 in love and romance in Amazon. And I was like, what? How did that happen? This is a book about designing your life, and how could it be in love and romance? And then I realized, hold on one second, isn't that great that, a book about designing the life you love, is in the top 100 books in love. And so now for 2023, my goal is to become number one in love, and really drive down that idea that it's, what I'm really doing here is design is the process. Your life or your long life is the project, but love is the goal. And so that's my 2023.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think at the long life book, Design the Long Life You Love, I know the tagline for the book is a step-by-step guide to love, purpose, well-being, and friendship. So they're wonderful things to be focused on as we face another year, because the world itself is getting busier, noisier. There's chaos everywhere. So I think that's a very good thing to be passionate about and to be focused on.
I love that, Simon. When you read the title of my book and subtitle, it sounds so good coming from your voice and your intonation. So thank you. I was like, that sounds good.
You're very kind. Well, look, before we wrap up today, I also want to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can find you. If people are looking to get in touch with you for all the wonderful areas that you're involved in, where would they find you? And also, if there's anything that I haven't touched on today that you'd like to share with our international audience, please feel free to share that with us today.
No, I think that our conversation, I really enjoyed it. So you have a way of drawing the person out. So I think I said everything that I would like to say. But in terms of how people can find me or find us, the best would be aysebirsel.com/newsletter, because they can then subscribe to our newsletter and know what we're up to. And then one of the things that we're up to is every Wednesday at 5 p.m. New York time, which might be your 10 p.m. I'm not sure. I do a virtual tea. And the virtual tea is we all get together and design our lives. So we put some of the things I talk about in the book to practice. And it's a beautiful community of multi-generational, multidisciplinary, really authentic group of people coming together. And it's the beginning of a lot of good friendships. So that's what I would recommend. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll also know when those are happening.
So everybody should subscribe to the newsletter and join the virtual tea catch up. That sounds wonderful. Well, look, that's a wonderful thing to end on. Thank you so much indeed for being one of the launch guests for the Global Discussion, this new podcast that we're very excited about. That brings us nicely to the end. Thank you so much to everybody who's been watching and listening to this episode. Please make sure that you like it, you subscribe to it, and all the wonderful things that you do with podcasts. And please tell people about it. And I'd like you to tune in again to listen to more discussions about creatives, leaders, and thinkers. And all that remains is for me to say thank you so much to Ayse for being with me today and for being part of this journey. So thank you so much indeed for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you again.
Thank you, Simon.